In 1923, one man transformed a crumbling empire into a modern republic, revolutionizing everything from the alphabet to women's rights. But here's what most people don't realize about Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the same leader praised by Western nations as a visionary modernizer, was simultaneously building one of the most authoritarian regimes of the 20th century. Today, we're examining the paradox of Turkey's founding father. Was he the hero who saved a nation, or the dictator who crushed dissent to build his vision? To understand this complex figure, we need to journey back to the aftermath of World War I. The once mighty Ottoman Empire lay in ruins, its territories carved up by victorious Allied powers. Foreign armies occupied parts of Anatolia, and it seemed the Turkish people might lose their homeland entirely. It was in this moment of national crisis that a military officer named Mustafa Kemal emerged, organizing resistance forces and ultimately establishing the Republic of Turkey in 1923. But the methods he used to achieve this transformation would spark debates that continue to this day. Between 1919 and 1922, Atatürk accomplished what seemed impossible. Leading the Turkish War of Independence, he expelled occupying forces and abolished the centuries-old Ottoman Sultanate. When the Republic was declared in 1923, he became its first president, embarking on reforms that would fundamentally reshape Turkish society. Consider the scale of these changes. In 1924, he abolished the Caliphate, ending a religious institution that had existed for over 600 years. By 1926, he'd replaced Islamic Sharia courts with a Swiss civil code, granting women civil equality decades before many European nations would do the same. The transformation was remarkable. In 1928, he changed the Turkish alphabet from Arabic to Latin script. Literacy rose from roughly a tenth in the late 1920s to about one-third by the mid-1940s, with the steepest gains in the 1930s. Turkish women gained the right to vote and stand for office in 1934, a full decade before France and nearly 4 decades before Switzerland. The Treaty of Lausanne in 1923 secured Turkey's sovereignty. In the 1930s, Atatürk's foreign policy motto, "Peace at home, peace in the world," guided a generally cautious, stability-first approach. Under his leadership, the nation launched ambitious industrialization programs, expanded railways, and established a national education system that replaced religious schools with secular institutions. These weren't just cosmetic changes. They represented a complete reimagining of what Turkey could become. Where once stood a declining empire, now emerged a nation-state with aspirations to join the ranks of modern Western powers. Beyond the headline reforms, the Republic rebuilt daily life. The 1924 Law of Unification of Education closed parallel religious school networks and brought all schools under the Ministry of Education, creating a national curriculum and teacher corps. Civil law reforms in 1926 made marriage a civil contract, abolished polygamy, and standardized inheritance and divorce, measures that dramatically changed family life and women's legal status. At the cultural level, institutions like the Turkish Historical Society, founded 1931, and the Turkish Language Association, 1932, promoted a new national narrative in a modernized language. The 1933 university reform overhauled higher education. Economically, state-led industrialization launched the first 5-year industrial plan in 1934, alongside new state banks and enterprises such as Sumer Bank, 1933, and Eddy Bank, 1935, laying early industrial foundations despite the shock of the Great Depression. But this transformation came at a significant cost. In 1925, Atatürk's government passed the law on the maintenance of order, granting sweeping powers that included censorship and martial law. What followed was the systematic elimination of political opposition. The Progressive Republican Party was banned in 1925. When the Free Republican Party gained unexpected popularity in 1930, it too was dissolved under pressure. For 20 years from 1925 to 1945, Turkey functioned as a single-party state under the Republican People's Party. Multi-party elections resumed in 1946, and the first peaceful transfer of power at the ballot box came in 1950. Special courts called independence tribunals were established to crush rebellion and dissent. The Sheikh Said Rebellion of 1925, largely involving Kurdish populations, was brutally suppressed. Historical records confirm approximately 660 executions during this period. Not the thousands sometimes claimed, but the repression was nevertheless severe. Opposition newspapers were banned, journalists imprisoned, and civil society organizations that didn't align with government views were shut down. The government also tightened formal press controls. The 1931 press law empowered authorities to close outlets deemed hostile to the state's general policy, and bans covered subjects like restoring the caliphate or advocating anarchism and communism. In practice, this, together with the 1925 law on the maintenance of order, which remained in force until 1929, kept dissenting print culture on a short leash and normalized emergency powers beyond the immediate rebellion years. Even the Turkish Women's Union, which had helped secure women's suffrage, was dissolved in 1935 when it began pressing for further reforms. A personality cult emerged around Atatürk himself. His image became omnipresent in schools, public buildings, and town squares. In 1934, Parliament granted him the surname Atatürk, meaning father of the Turks, and prohibited anyone else from using it. The government's Turkification policies forced cultural assimilation on minority populations. The Kurdish language and identity were suppressed, and population exchanges with Greece in 1923 uprooted roughly 1.3 million Greek Orthodox from Turkey and about 355,400 Muslims from Greece. So how do we reconcile these two faces of Atatürk? Historian Erik Jan Serscher describes Turkey between 1925 and 1945 as an authoritarian single-party regime, accurately called a dictatorship in form, though distinct from the fascist or totalitarian regimes of the same era. Interestingly, Atatürk's methods attracted attention from unexpected quarters. German nationalists and early Nazi party members studied his one-party system and ethnic nationalism. Historical records show that Hitler himself referred to Atatürk as his star in the darkness in 1933, though the contexts and ideologies of the two leaders differed significantly. Yet even Atatürk's critics acknowledge his role as a visionary modernizer who fundamentally reshaped Turkey's social, cultural, and political landscape. The reforms he implemented, from women's rights to secular education, created opportunities that wouldn't have existed under the Ottoman system. This presents us with a profound paradox. Atatürk was simultaneously a nation builder and an autocrat, a modernizer and an authoritarian, a liberator and an oppressor. He freed Turkey from foreign occupation while restricting freedoms at home. He championed women's rights while suppressing political opposition. He promoted education while controlling what could be taught. The question, hero or dictator, might be the wrong one to ask. History rarely offers us figures who fit neatly into single categories. Atatürk embodied both roles. He was the military genius who saved Turkey from partition, and the authoritarian who brooked no opposition to his vision. Perhaps the more important question is, could Turkey have achieved its remarkable transformation without authoritarian methods? Would a democratic approach have succeeded in that specific historical moment? These are questions historians continue to debate. What's undeniable is that Atatürk's legacy shaped not just Turkey, but our understanding of how nations modernize and at what cost. His story reminds us that historical figures, like history itself, resist simple categorization. What do you think? Can revolutionary change justify authoritarian methods? How should we judge historical figures who achieved great things through questionable means? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every one and try to respond to as many as possible. If you found this analysis valuable, make sure you're subscribed for more historical deep dives that challenge conventional narratives. hoping for days full of peace and tranquility for all of you. Until we meet again, goodbye.